All right, TJ, are you ready for this?
Let's do this. I mean, much like in life, we save the best for last, right?
And that is
the NFC's.
Now 8-show run of TJ Jefferson providing all of us his thoughts on who's the greatest player in the history of every franchise in the NFL. We broke it down by division. You saved the NFC East for last.
I did.
TJ.
Yes.
I need 4 names from you. So I guess this is the NFC East Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah. Yes.
One from the Cowboys, one from the Eagles, one from the Giants, one from Washington. You have the floor, TJ Jefferson.
All right. Like I said, we saved the best for last here, guys. And, much like, high school sports, what they do to get your appetite up, they give you the JV, they let the little fellows play, and then the varsity comes out. And that's what I decided to do here today.
My God.
Have the varsity come out last.
The 2 divisions in which Tom Brady has played have just been called the junior varsity.
Junior varsity division. We have the most Super Bowl championships in this division. Whatever, no big deal. All right, so we're going to start this off with the easiest one. With all due respect to anyone who's donned a New York Giants helmet, I had to put Lawrence Taylor in there as my GOAT.
That's it.
That was easy.
That's understandable.
As for the rest, they were not so easy.
Okay.
But I came up with this. For the Philadelphia Eagles, I went with Brian Dawkins. For the Washington football team, I went with Darryl Green.
Okay.
And for the Dallas Cowboys, this is going to cause a lot of discussion.
Nope.
But he's one of the best I've ever seen, and I'm going with Emmitt Smith. And I stayed up late night debating this because it was between Lilly, Staubach, Emmitt.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth, and then I decided to go to websites just to see who they had.
Yeah.
I'd say every website I went to is probably 60-40 Staubach. But man, when you talk about a running back position is probably the most grueling position in football. You have a guy who is the all-time leading rusher. He has scored the most touchdowns by land. He led a team to 3 Super Bowls. He was the catalyst. Emmitt Smith did it all, and he is honestly one of the most disrespected greats in the history of sports because all you ever hear is about, he had a good team, he had a good line, and this, that, and the third. Emmitt Smith was doing this his whole life, though, guys. He was the number 1 running back in high school. He went to Florida. He rushed for, let me get this right, 3,900 yards and 36 touchdowns. You know how many linemen he had that got drafted? 1 in 3 years. Then he comes to the Cowboys. Rushes for 3 seasons, about 3,000 yards with no Pro Bowl offensive linemen. So that whole argument that Emmitt had the greatest line, he did have a great line for about 5 years. But the rest of the time, the line was good. It wasn't as great as everyone makes it out to be. So because that happened at a time in my life, I was in my early 20s, getting to see this team who we all laugh about now, about they haven't won in a long time. But to me, that was my youth. That was the greatest time of my life as a football fan, and he was the reason. So that's why I went with Emmitt. And all due respect to Roger Staubach, I know he's a great, and he very easily could have and maybe should have been put in here. But for me, I had to go with Emmitt.
You can only choose one. And when we were teasing this in the previous hour, and I was teasing you saying 2 words, Blake Jarwin.
Yeah. Well,
but I said that the one that I would choose is not old school enough for some people.
Are you thinking Bob Lilly?
I was talking about Emmitt.
Oh, okay.
That I would
not
choose
old school
Emmitt.
enough. Gotcha.
Not old school enough for some people. Emmitt's not old school enough for some people. Even though it has been 30 years since he first shown up on the scene.
Yeah.
But there are enough people, and I totally get it, the Landry hat, Staubach quarterback, Dallas Cowboys of the John Facenda NFL Films world that caused the Cowboys to become and be named America's team, that played in that stadium that Emmitt and Troy and Irv won all those games and championships in, with the hole in the roof so God can watch his favorite team. That was all arranged and created by that era of Cowboys with Dorsett and Pearson and Lilly and White and what have you.
All guys who deserve mention.
No question. But Emmitt is the all-time leading rusher in the National Football League's history. And ask anybody on the triplet teams about Emmitt and his worth. And if you remember, he held out.
He held out. And what happened
They
when he
went
held out?
0-2
And then he came back.
And they won the Super Bowl.
There you go.
So,
I mean, what more?
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And I know what might be coming your way for saying that, or mine, having backed your play. Lawrence Taylor's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer. In respect,
I love
they had
Brian Dawkins, and he is a personification of everything in Philadelphia and the Eagles. And I totally get it. I would have gone Reggie White.
Yeah, it came down to Reggie, Chuck Bednarik, and Dawkins.
You could have gone that too.
Could have Bednarik. I had Reggie White originally. Okay, when I first made this list up last year, I told you Reggie White was the guy. Then Reggie White, 6 years, that's enough time. But I have friends who are Eagles fans, and I got hit up by some of them, and they were like, Dawkins was the personification. He was the heart. He was the soul. 13 years. McNabb, but as the greatest Eagle ever, I don't know.
4 straight NFC Championship games, got a Super Bowl in there.
Brian Dawkins is part of all those teams.
Yeah. And as a Cowboys fan, I hate the Eagles, and I hated Brian Dawkins because Brian Dawkins devastated us every single time he played. Like twice a year, it's like you got to put up with Brian Dawkins.
Isn't he the one who picked off Favre in that playoff game? That epic Eagles-Packers playoff game that once again got the Eagles to championship game.
If there was a big play to be made, he was near it. So.
Fred X. You didn't name Freddie Mitchell?
Harold Carmichael, Steve Van Buren also deserved to be named on the list. And as far as the Washington team,
I don't think you could make a mistake with Darryl Green. You could. Art Monk's the other one.
Art Monk was in because I have a roommate, my old roommate from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
What's up, Spider? He watches the show. His big Washington fan, and his mom, huge Art Monk fan. So when I initially made the list, it was Art Monk. But I talked to him the other day, and he said, as a Washington fan, it was Darryl Green. So I went with what he said. But John Riggins, I actually almost put the Hogs in here, guys, just to show love to that offensive line.
You can't just name them.
But shout out to Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm. They were great. Joe Theismann, obviously, for Washington.
What do you think, Chris?
Let me just tell you the Giants real quick. Strahan, Frank Gifford, Harry Carson, Phil Simms, and Eli. Roosevelt Brown and Y.E. Tittle went back a little bit. But
Sam Huff.
But it's Lawrence Taylor is in that short discussion of the single greatest football player ever. Like yesterday, people were arguing about the Jim Brown pick, and with all due respect to Otto Graham or anyone else, like Jim Brown, man,
Brown's on NFL's Mount Rushmore. So is Lawrence Taylor. So you can't argue with it.
And also, I know some people, Washington fans, are going to say Sammy Baugh, and again, I say this respectfully. The NFL didn't integrate until 1946. Therefore, Sammy Baugh played over half of his career. He never played against anyone of color. So I'm sorry, but that nullifies it in my opinion. You can yell at me in the comments if you want, but it is what it is. So that's just how I feel.
Sam Huff, just to throw it out there, he created the position of the spot and the linebacker that he played, middle linebacker. I mean, he created it. And essentially... and do you know who his defensive coordinator was? Do you know who the coordinators on those Giants teams were?
Tom Landry was one?
Tom Landry was the guy who created the defense around Sam Huff. And you know who the offensive coordinator was? His name was Vince Lombardi.
Lombardi, yeah, I was just about to say that.
Imagine Lombardi and Landry were your coordinators.
Yeah.
And of course, if there was sports talk radio back in the day, they would call up and say, fire those coordinators.
Obviously.
But really, I mean, Landry and Huff created a style of defense together. But recency definitely requires us to say Lawrence Taylor.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy who had extracurricular activities before, after, and maybe even during games, and still.
Well done, TJ.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for letting me do this, man. Like I said, I wrote this list last year and kind of sat on it.
This? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, you let me do this.
No. It's a team effort where we talk about it and we say the great idea, best idea wins, as our friend Brian Cranston said that.
But this has been fun, man. Just kind of like.
And we disagree with half of them.
Yeah, but that's always going to be the case.
Have we really? I mean,
I think the biggest one was the Sam Mills one, especially from
you go on Aaron Rodgers for the Packers, telling Bart Starr pound sand with your
I would never tell
MVPs of Super Bowls 1 and 2 and all the championships that you had beforehand.
I would never tell Bart Starr to pound sand. Maybe like an Eagles
what you did.
player.
No, I mean, it's what you did essentially.
I mean, I wouldn't look at it like that.
Chose Aaron Rodgers as the Packers, right?
Obviously, like I said, the Sam Mills one, I went with my heart. I thought that, being a member of the original team, coming up with their logo, with their motto, keep pounding, that received some brushback, and I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm okay
Jonas
with
Gray as the Patriot was very controversial.
Very controversial.
Right,
well,
what
look,
else?
guys, men
Darrelle
lie.
Revis would have been nice.
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. That's why.
Darrelle Revis instead of Joe Namath. Get out of here, man.
By the way,
But that's just so sad. Like, is the Jets one the oldest?
That's a good question.
Jim
Let me
Brown.
think. Jim
Oh,
Brown.
Jim Brown.
Brown,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to show love
Where
to
it's
the
like
old
it's
school.
been 50 years to have a shot to knock him off the mountaintop.
And he ain't going to do it.
And neither franchise has done it.
Well, Alan Page, we had him.
Alan Page,
You know?
So he was back there as well. Deacon Jones.
Until Kirk Cousins wins the Super Bowl this
The
year.
crazy thing is that the Browns could go on some crazy run once all of this insanity settles, right? And still, it won't matter. It's going to be Jim Brown.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if Zach Wilson wins a championship in New York or two,
If he wins 2, it's him.
it's him.